Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us today for this webinar on multi-factor authentication. So we'll show you how we can use our MFA solution to stop most common cyber attacks. My name is Anil and I represent Logon Software. Our company is an ISDecisions partner in Asia. And our key speaker today is Kate Fleming, who's a technical sales manager with ISDecisions. Kate will be sharing her knowledge and experience with MFA with us today. I'll walk through our agenda for today quickly. So I shall be starting up with a quick business case for MFA. Kate will focus on the myths associated with MFA. She will share best practices for preparing your business for MFA, followed by a demo. And we'll have a Q&A session at the end where Kate can answer your questions. So the current pandemic that we are all facing has made most businesses implement a complete or partial lockdown to protect their employees and customers. So this is now a new normal, at least until 2021. With most employees working remotely, security risks are now extending beyond the corporate perimeter to our homes, our employees' homes. And cyber criminals are using these weakened security infrastructure to launch more attacks. So passwords were first thought to be the first line of defense, but we know passwords are extremely weak and very easy to hack. So therefore, there is a need for more advanced authentication methods to protect our systems, to ensure security while offering convenient access to our users. 273% increase in attacks, 8.4 billion records exposed, all in the first quarter of 2020 alone. So what I'd like to do is to highlight two very public recent cases which were in the media in Asia. In 2019, Singapore's Ministry of Health, confidential information belonging to 14,000 plus HIV patients, including names, contact details, test results were all leaked online. This attack was eventually traced to someone who had access to an employee credential. In March 2020, hackers stole login credentials of 2 Marriott staff and stole contact data of 5.2 million guests and members. So one of the key leading causes that we see for these kind of breaches are compromised credentials. Most of these attacks are well planned, where hackers install malware or use other similar methods to steal employee login credentials. Let's take a look at the impact of these attacks. Can you guess what the average cost of a data breach is? Yeah, $3.92 million. This is based on a latest cost of data breach report from Ponemon Institute. This figure includes many cost factors: legal costs, costs of forensic investigations, loss of brand equity, customer turnover, loss of employee productivity, and so on. Once this bad actor who's gained credentials of an employee gains access, they do not cause damage immediately. They usually conduct extensive reconnaissance and then carry out an attack at some time when it is least expected. In the case of Marriott, that breach was discovered only after 1 month. So the demand for multi-factor authentication solutions in our market is growing. We have been extremely excited with the popularity of Userlock. Our customers have been demanding a solution that was easy to deploy and implement, easy for end users, scalable, and easy licensing. In fact, one of our recent implementations was for up to 10,000 endpoints. Userlock also offers much more than MFA with support for macOS, contextual restrictions, real-time insight, and so on, features which you will shortly see live. So some of our recent implementations in Asia include global banks, telecom companies, healthcare institutions, R&D labs, manufacturing, logistics, and so on, a complete cross-section of industry. So Userlock helps our customers balance high level of security and convenience. Now, please join me in welcoming Kate Fleming to share her experience and show you Userlock. So I'm going to pass this over to Kate. Kate.
Thank you very much, Anil. Hi, everyone. My name is Kate Fleming from ISDecisions. I want to start by talking with you about some of the myths of multi-factor authentication. So a lot of times we hear that only large enterprises should use MFA, that smaller companies aren't susceptible to breaches, or it's just too expensive, and this is really like a large enterprise solution. And that couldn't be farther from the truth. Everyone has sensitive data, large companies to small companies. If small companies want to grow, especially, they need to make sure that they're protecting their sensitive data. And oftentimes small companies can be an easier target for hackers because they're counting on the fact that they don't have the budget, they're not going to have these big enterprise solutions in security, and maybe the users aren't as educated because they don't have a large human resource department to talk about IT security and training sessions and all that. So they can be an easier target, and even if it's a smaller cost or ransom for the hacker, it can be really debilitating and even fatal for a small company. So definitely MFA is something for all companies, as long as we can find something that is scalable and affordable and easy to use. So we can implement something that can fit a small company's budget and infrastructure, but that can grow with it as the company grows. The second one is that MFA should only be used to protect privileged users. Often this can be why people start looking for an MFA solution, but oftentimes compromised credentials are not a domain admin that somebody would think of. Domain admins are can be much more careful with their credentials, and everyday users have access to privileged information anyway. You can have finance and accounting departments that have access to obvious privileged data, such as finance records, but even sales departments have access to client information that can be valuable. Marketing can have access to the company strategy. Developers and designers, they can have valuable intellectual property that needs to be safeguarded. So everyone has some kind of privileged access. Once you have access to the network, you can do damage. So whether it's a normal user, that that's credential is compromised, and that leads to lateral movement within the network, where they can RDP to more high sensitive machines, or they can elevate their own credentials. You really need to protect everyone with MFA. Privileged users with different kinds of access policies maybe, but at least some kind of policy for everyone is a really good IT security practice anyway. And MFA, if you have something that's easy to implement and understand for everyone to use, then there's no reason that it can't be deployed for all users. The third myth is that MFA is not perfect. Well, we all know that no security solution is perfect. We're all just trying to do the best we can to put things in place to prevent attacks and to be alerted for any suspicious behavior. And MFA is really, it's the purest solution. It's the one thing you can say, well, I have this password, you know, that already we should have a strong password policy. And then I have a second way of authenticating where I have, the user has a device and it's unique to them. And I can be sure that that login is legitimate with the right person accessing the right machine at the right time. So, you know, any kind of doubt that MFA is not the perfect solution. You know, there was a recent warning from the FBI regarding situations around cyber criminals who are trying to bypass MFA with some authenticator vulnerabilities or taking over the communication channel that's used for the authenticator, or some real-time phishing. But according to the experts, even these types of attacks are very costly for hackers, and they take a lot of effort. So usually, you know, a hacker that encounters an MFA is going to prefer to move on to an easier target, an easier victim, than to go through the cost and time of bypassing an MFA. And then there's types of MFA that are more secure than others. For example, SMS is one of the least secure methods of MFA, as opposed to an authenticator application or a token like we use with Userlock. So yeah, it's not perfect. Of course, nothing is perfect, but it's definitely your best tool to protect against compromised credentials. The last one is that MFA disrupts user productivity. This is also a myth if you have the right tools and onboarding procedure. An MFA tool that works as it should take a couple seconds for a user to authenticate with MFA. So we're talking about a couple seconds a day. This is not going to disrupt users' productivity. Also, you know, we can put in place different access policies. So maybe for an admin who has to open, you know, several sessions throughout the day because they're RDPing to different servers and this and that, we don't want to request MFA every single time. You know, we can have a solution that's smart enough to know that the first session originates from the same IP address, so that's the same initial access point. We don't need to ask MFA for every subsequent session. So we can adapt the policy to make sure that we're balancing, you know, user productivity with security. And obviously we want something that's not going to create a bunch of help desk tickets because users don't know how to use it, or it is disrupting. So we need something that's easy for admin, it's easy for users, and it lowers any kind of disruption for sure. But this is entirely impossible with solutions like Userlock and authenticator applications or tokens where we press a button such as YubiKey, or we just enter a 6-digit code with programmable tokens. So it absolutely does not need to be a disruption to your users, and it shouldn't be. So the next thing, the must-dos for MFA and in security in general. So securing logins significantly improves your security stance. So authentication, as Anil was talking about in the examples with the business cases, is at the core of nearly every type of attack, whether it's like an average user's credentials being compromised and then lateral movement with a remote session or a PowerShell script or leveraging of a map drive. You need to secure all your logons to your network. Anybody that is getting into your network, you should know who, when, how, why they got in there. This is going to give you the visibility that you need, and it's going to reduce your surface attack by controlling who can log in and where. And the thing is MFA can actually stop an attack. It's not just something that is an alert or a report or analysis. It's something that is saying, no, you cannot log in. You don't have the right credentials, you don't have the right MFA. I'm refusing the login. So it's very important to bump up your security for any size company. Second one, you don't want to make MFA frustrating for IT departments. Like I just touched on earlier, you don't want something that's creating a bunch of help desk tickets, or that the IT department cannot explain easily to its users. It needs to be something that the IT department is going to be on board with, because as we know, the job of an IT admin is often to just be putting out fires left and right so that people can work, things are not going as planned. So the last thing we want to do is make something even more difficult for the IT department. So we need something easy to use, easy to monitor, easy to modify, something that integrates easily with our current tools, such as Active Directory, without, installing a separate server or a separate, proxy server to manage all these different things. We want to make something streamlined. So the next thing is that MFA must balance user security and user productivity. So like I said before, we need something that there's nothing more secure than MFA today. It's something that it's strongly recommended by many compliances today, and it's slowly starting to become required for a lot. So we know that it's in the IT security world, it's already confirmed as something that is, the new norm for everyone. And so companies need to adjust that new requirement with user productivity. We don't want to cost the company any business by adding security measures. So, we need to find something that works for small companies and is scalable. The fourth one, educate and empower your users to support MFA. So this one is really important as from a kind of a culture change perspective, that cybersecurity is everyone's responsibility in a company, and it's important to teach and educate your users that their credentials are really important and need to be safeguarded, and that they can really cost the company and people's jobs and have really lasting effects if people don't take it seriously. And if you can make people understand that and give them their responsibility of having a strong password and getting on board with MFA, because once you've installed this culture, nobody wants to be the one that put the company at risk. No one wants to be the one that didn't follow the rules and got on board with this MFA. And then it gives everybody a personal responsibility and a sense of pride that they're doing their part in supporting the company and putting in place the security measures. So again, MFA is not just for privileged users, as we talked in the beginning. So it's an easy place to start with MFA. Often people want to start with their domain admins, and that is a good place to start because they're a little bit more in tune with IT and security, and so they can really test out the MFA thoroughly before deploying to everyone. But it is important also to realize the other users who will need MFA and do have access to privileged information. So like I touched on before, just make sure you're putting something in place that is scalable and that you can use by department. So for example, because Userlock integrates with your Active Directory, you can choose access policies based on your different groups who are probably already organized by the different access and privilege they have to company resources. So we can just build on that layer and add now MFA as we need to those different groups as needed. And the last one, get management, commitment, and buy-in. So no company, large or small, can survive without IT security measures in place. And it's often a battle for IT departments to convince upper management the importance of IT security and things that they need to make their job easier. You don't want to be the one that was saying no to an IT policy and then get hit with a ransomware or a cyber attack later down the line. It's a really, really important insurance policy for your company. So getting management commitment to move forward on the MFA project is really important to its success. And it can really help you in your business with your customers and your supply chains. A lot of people, the working environment today is a lot of collaboration of people connecting to a lot of different domains to partner up with different clients, and people want to know what kind of security measures do you have in place? Do you have MFA? Do you have a way to audit users' logins or prevent them from logging into certain machines or at certain times? So you want to build trust with your clients and your supply chains and your partners and say, yes, we have these measurements in place. We have MFA. It's as secure as we can get. And you can have confidence in us that we protect your data and our own data. We take it very seriously. And this can help you to remain competitive because you're protecting your company data, your intellectual property. You're up to date with new IT security solutions. You're not falling behind with your competitors, and it's an important building block for any company. And so we need something that is, like Anil said, easy to deploy. It's scalable. It's easy for end users, and it's a licensing that we can understand for end users and for partners. So I'm going to jump over now to a quick demonstration of Userlock so you can see what it looks like. So here we are in the Userlock Console on the MultiFactor Authentication dashboard. So this gives me a quick view of multi-factor events that have happened throughout the day. I can also look to the last 7 days and check any help requests that have been happening. So Userlock is an on-premise client-server application. So we install a service on a server in the domain, and we deploy agents to endpoints where we need to protect logins. So it works alongside your Active Directory. There is nothing to install on your domain controller or your Active Directory. There's no modification to its schema or anything like that. So it's just another tool working alongside. So what we need to do in Userlock to enable multi-factor authentication or to add any other contextual restrictions that we can add as well is we need to create a protected account, and we can do this at the user group or OU level from our Active Directory. So I'm going to select a group, and I've created a group in my Active Directory that's called MFA users. So that makes it easy for me to do some slow onboarding. And so here I'm going to see my protected account added to these ones. And I'm going to go into the properties. And this is where I can say all the different restrictions that I want to add for these users. So I'm going to scroll down directly to the multi-factor. So I'm going to enable MFA for this group. So we're compatible with a couple different types of MFA to suit different types of budgets or needs for companies. So the most widely used is authenticator applications. So this is an app that you download on your smartphone, such as Google Authenticator, Microsoft Authenticator, LastPass, etc. And we're going to scan a QR code. I'm going to show you that in just a bit to configure with the smartphone. And this uses TOTP authentication. So it's a one-time password that expires every 30 seconds. And this works completely offline. There's no need for internet access. None of the data is stored in the cloud or anything like that. And it works offline as well if the user is not within the network. So we have different ways to put in place these restrictions. So as I said before, you need to choose a policy that works for your users. Are these privileged users that are logging into servers all the time? Or do they do RDP sessions? So let's choose. Do we need absolutely all connections? Maybe we just need remote connections, or we want just remote connections that come from outside the network. So we can choose there, and then we can choose when we need to require MFA. So this goes back to not wanting to disrupt user productivity. If users all are working in an office, for example, maybe you're going to ask for only the first logon of the day because we can see people, we know they're here, that's fine. If users are logging in from home, they're working remotely now, as more and more people are, maybe we're going to want to do at every logon because we can't see the person. We need to make sure that any connection to this machine is verified with MFA. So we have the same exact settings for the server connections. So we're going to apply these settings to these users for MFA. And then I'm going to log in with the user Bob, who is part of this group. And Bob is going to be prompted to configure MFA. So this is a very simple pop-up. We can modify the instructions also if the admin wants to give certain instructions to the end users. So all he needs to do is download an authenticator application. So I've got Google Authenticator on my phone. If you're using a programmable token, such as Token 2, it's going to be the same thing. You're going to need the application to scan the code. The difference is that the one-time password will appear on the token instead of the phone. So here, I'm opening my application, I'm scanning the barcode, and now I've got my code. If for any reason the code is not working or the user needs help, they can click on this button and ask for help for the admin, which we can see later in the Userlock Console, and their logon will be denied. So here I'm going to enter my code, and that's it. So that was the first configuration. So I only have to do that one time. So we can see now, if I connect to another machine on remote desktop, and as soon as I connect to the machine, now I'm going to be prompted again for MFA. Because if you remember, I said to require MFA for all logins. So here we go. It's just one pop-up box that's asking me again for the code. And for the end user, it's seamless. This is taking a couple seconds. I enter the code. And now I have my remote desktop session open. So back in the Userlock Console, I can see here all my users that are connected to my network. I can see the session Bob just opened on that first workstation, and then the remote desktop session. You can see this admin has a terminal session open. And if I need to, I can force a log off of these sessions from the console here. I can send messages to my end users. I can really react and interact to everything that's happening on my network in real time. So back to the multi-factor authentication dashboard. Here for any help requests that I receive, so these requests will come by email and by pop-up message. I can choose what to do for that user. So say the user has forgotten their phone or they've gotten a new one, so they need to reconfigure. We can decide what to do. So as an admin, Alice has just requested some help here. And I'm going to say, okay, I know this is Alice. She's verified with me over the phone. I'm just going to temporarily disable MFA for today. And then tomorrow, she's promised she's not going to forget it. She's going to need to use it again. And then here I'm getting all the logins and logoffs and everything that's happening on my network I can see with Userlock as far as Active Directory logins. So I've got extensive reporting if I need to see who logged in where, how long were people logged on, what machines did they connect to. And even in this quick dashboard, I can view a detailed report, and I can see all my MFA events. So was it canceled? Was it successful? Any kind of help requests? And I can be sure if there's any kind of inquiry of what happened, who was logged in a couple minutes, I can query Userlock and I can send this kind of information to my admins, to management, to auditors very easily. So that's the basic demo of Userlock. The other part of the MFA that I didn't mention is we're also compatible with YubiKeys. So sometimes people prefer to use a YubiKey instead of a token instead of an application, and that works absolutely perfectly with Userlock. The setup is just a little different, but the difference is that with YubiKey you press on the key to validate your MFA. So it just means that it's a device that's unique to you. And you can use that instead of the smartphone. The other thing that's important with Userlock with the MFA is the connection from offline machines. So today we have a lot of people that are mobile, whether it's salespeople that go to clients or just people that are working from home and working at the office. And we're going to have machines that go offline at some point. And if we need to, we can protect those machines with MFA as well. So in this setting, we can choose, if that agent on that remote machine cannot contact Userlock, do we allow the connection always? Do we always deny, or do we ask for MFA? And in that case, it will work just as we saw before. The user will get the pop-up code, the pop-up box, and they'll enter their 6-digit code. So that's it for me for the Userlock demo. I will send it back to Anil for the Q&A.
Yeah, so the chat option is available for everyone to ask any questions you have. Please feel free to type in your queries.
So we have a question for Kate. So does Userlock work with push notifications?
That's a great question. We have had a lot of requests for push notifications. So this is a top priority for our development team that we are currently working on. So today we don't work with push notifications because we're completely offline. But by the end of this year, we will have an alpha version of something that will include push notifications. So the feature is constantly developing, and this is a top priority for our roadmap. So we are actively working on including push notifications.
That's great. Also, are the license sold on a subscription base?
No, the licensing is perpetual. So this is by concurrent session. So it's really about how much you're consuming. And it's a perpetual license. You purchase the licenses one time. They're good for life. The first year includes maintenance provided by a logon team and myself for any technical support, any upgrades, new releases. And there's a 20% cost to continue to renew the maintenance for the years after the first year.
Great. I have a question from the attendee. How often is Userlock synced to the group u/user when any changes is made to the GPO in domain controller?
That's a great question. So any changes that are made, if a user is moved from a group to another group, the change is immediate in Userlock. If any new group is created, the Active Directory is synced every 5 minutes. So, and that's without installing anything on the domain controller. We're just querying the Active Directory, and it's a 5-minute sync for any creation of new groups.
Okay. So if the users take their laptops home and to their clients' offices, do they have to use MFA when they're logging on offline?
So if the user has their agent installed on that machine, so like if you're saying it's a company laptop, then we'll already have the agent deployed, and they are enrolled in MFA, then yes, you will have the exact same user experience as we have when we're on premise. They're going to get the dialog box and they're going to have to authenticate with MFA. And then that information is stored locally on the machine. So when the agent comes back in contact with the Userlock service, everything is updated and the admin will have all the details of any kind of activity that happened on that machine while the user was offline.
Okay. We have another question. What happens if the Userlock server goes down? Will it interrupt the user connections, or is there a backup?
Great question. So yes, you can configure a backup server for Userlock, which in any case, if the primary goes down, the backup takes over and all of the restrictions remain in place. If the server goes down, it will depend on what you have here, but by default, users will be allowed to connect to the network if the service cannot be contacted, or if you've chosen to ask for MFA for offline machines, they'll have MFA, or the connection will be denied if you've chosen this one. But it is a good practice to put in place a backup server. That way you can always have a failover if the primary goes down and everything can stay up and running. All events will be logged and all restrictions will remain in place.
Okay, thank you. I saw someone asking if we would share the slides of the presentation. So we would be sharing the recording of this webinar on our website. So you can go to log on website to find the recording for this webinar. And if you do want to know more information, you can also go to userlock.com, which is on the PowerPoint right now. So you can get more information about what the strengths and the benefits of using these products for your MFA. So I see there's no other questions. So thank you very much, Kate, for hosting this webinar today. And thank you everyone for joining. So I hope that you find this event very useful. So we will close the session. And thank you for ISDecisions for preparing all the content today. So
Thanks so much, everyone. Thank you, Log On.
Thank you, Kate. Bye.